Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing. Spring is emerging, and we can use this week's exercise to explore these cycles, these waves of change and variation, but also repetition and measuring of our time by looking not just at the seasons, but at our regular clock, the moon, the guidance of our calendars over the centuries, and our subtle night light that just leaves us in a little darkness every once in a while. I find taking a chance to go up to the roof or out in the backyard, somewhere where you can just stare up and let the filtered, reflected sunlight of that secondary globe that orbits around our planet inspire some imagination and some wonder as it guides our tides and our shifting weather and our atmosphere, and provides its own rhythm of stability, supporting life here as we know it. So we'll use our attention and awareness to bring a mindful journey to exploring the moon as inspiration to start a drawing and to get inwards to our own imagination and relaxation. Grab a pen or pencil, a pad of paper, and establish your space. Let's draw together. My brother sent me a book last week or a week before for my birthday that was Robert Heinlein's The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which I've never read, and then started thinking a lot about the moon in general as, something for an act of drawing. I guess it's, kind of always there, and thought that might be a good place to start the exercise with an image of something we're all used to that serves a rhythm that we all experience, both overtly as we see it and subversively as it changes our tides. And so as some kind of a warm-up beginning, just starting with the circle or the outline on a piece of scrap paper, getting comfortable with that circular shape, starting to orbit the tip of that pencil around the center, and dealing with the challenges of making something like a geometric circle that feels always a little bit imperfect. So playing a bit with size, seeing where the control of the hands feels more comfortable and less comfortable, more challenging or less challenging, perhaps starting in different directions, going clockwise or counterclockwise, beginning at the top and returning around, or starting at the bottom to make the revolution there, just to start and train that hand to move in an arc. Practice that motion this morning as it could lay the foundation for our representation of a spherical-ish body in the heavens. And with a few circles just before we transition to the longer exercise, using them to take a breath in and make a fairly large one as you let the breath out. Maybe making one revolution or going around as many times as it takes to just let that breath ease out. Breathing in again and finding a place to begin making another very large circle or wobbly shape, depending on how it's coming out from the hands early in the morning, starting the day. And maybe one more with the breath in and slow and even around to complete that outline. And with a little bit of that established on a fresh sheet, thinking about where you'll make your own interpretation or internal image of that idea of the moon. Is it large? Is it off to the side? And just begin with a breath in, forming that light circular-ish outline that travels through the sky, and then taking some time with it to decide how you see the moon. Is it full, or perhaps in its waning, building its crescent thumbnail reveal there, as its rhythms of position orbiting around the earth and reflecting the sun back down as our more subtle night light, bringing the pencil along the edge to navigate the little bumpiness or softness that we might see from here or have in an image of photographs, renderings, movies, and contrasting that perhaps with the harder, bit sharper line of the shadow's edge, still wobbling and moving around a little bit to those contours on the moon. And we can stay here with one image or expand and continue to develop more of them, deciding to work inward and begin to add some of the patchiness, the craters, things in the rough circular shape from impacts on the surface, bringing little pockets and deformations, ridges, and valleys. Not necessarily concerned with the specific or accuracy, but depending on the image that you see, letting that come through or just play in these circles or half circles. That pock the surface of a sphere, winding its way around us. And if you have a line of the changing meridian between darkness and lightness there, out of those marks transition from one side crisp and brightly lit to another softer, maybe invisible, or just slightly there. Letting something of that image build itself inside of our mind, bringing our attention to how we see in something of a space of imagination, observation, and memory. Fuzziness of things that we record that without deeper practice become abstractions or just thoughts and whimsies. But still real inside that vision that we have in our mind. In the moon's place, resting against the backdrop of the darkness, may bring an opportunity to begin to extend its perimeter, bringing further revolutions to that circle. And if you have a singular object or multiples developing, you could explore the cycle or the presence of a moment in that rhythm, using the retracing and extending of this outer profile projected to us against the sky as a chance to bring attention inward to our breathing on that same predictable cycle, choosing the place to begin the in and the out. Is it a full revolution per action? Or perhaps on something larger, about half and half? Or just letting the breath be at its natural pace and using it as an opportunity to mark the attention, to mark the moment of transition from expanding the lungs, drawing in the atmosphere from outside, and then contracting that diaphragm, letting the rib cage shrink back in and fully release all of the air, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and other gases held in here in our planet's atmosphere. Breathing in and letting it drift out in the motion of the hand. With that breath establishing a kind of baseline or continuity of attention, we can let our eyes track to the forefront. Are they following the tip of the pencil or pen? Are they drifting into a bit of unfocus around the drawing emerging on the page? Recognizing what might be happening there. Working with it to bring your attention into that space. So letting our attention focus deeply on the tip of the pencil. Bringing some awareness to what that changes in our action, as we must guide that focus of our eyes, and by bringing it in narrower, losing track of some of the wide or the broad, perhaps as I am experiencing some degree of unease or discomfort for not seeing the whole picture. Being okay with that, letting it continue to track as close as it may to the other orbits around on the page. Keeping that visual attention there on the moment of interface between our drawing tool and this medium to capture its material. We am beginning to work some of the layers of graphite into the space of darkness, of not reflecting in the light. Keeping those eyes for a few more revolutions, just deeply focused on the tip of whatever you're using to draw. Recognizing, just like with our breathing, when it might drift out of our attention, it can be quite difficult to keep that singular focus with all the other things going on around. And we're bound to wander off a little bit in our mind. And we can bring it back onto the course. Bring our attention back on to what's at hand, that moment of action, moment of interface that here we share with the drawing. And in other times we might share with people, with work we're doing, with a meeting, with listening. Easy to drift, to let our mind occupy our thoughts. And with practice, perhaps it becomes a little easier to bring it back, or at least to recognize our drifting, and to have techniques to help us guide that attention. And this can also be, just like any exercise, a bit fatiguing to the instruments, to the eyes, to the mind, as it must maintain that focus. And so kind of take a few moments now, perhaps with drawing or without, to slow it down, close the eyes a little bit, squish them together, let them open again, just to bring the body's nerve attention back to them and how they're feeling, to let them look across the room for a little while and then look into the darkness behind the eyes, just to unfocus and refocus at various distances, to let them relax as we work with all the little muscles that allow us to see near and far, so that they find again their equilibrium after being stretched into one direction for a little while. And if you still have space on whatever current area you're working shade or darkness into that moon object, feel free to continue there, or if it's gotten full and crowded, you can move on to a new space, bring moons to the moon, bring new orbits to the imagination. The initial subject is just a starting place. Choose the way we keep on that journey as we move along with the drawing. And now we can use that same deep focus, letting the eyes still be soft, letting the tongue and face and lips be soft, the things around us in that sensory area of our eyes. Letting our arm, shoulders, upper back be soft for a moment. Letting our lower back and hips soften up a little bit in our seat, move around and find some relaxation as we keep the pencil moving, engaging, and extending the orbits or bringing in some darkness. And then bringing our attention to our fingertips, to the vibrations working their way from the paper, from the surface of the table or sketchbook or desk that we might be working on, from the hardness or softness, the fineness or precision of the tool that we're using, how it may scratch or move along that paper medium, and letting our internal awareness to that sensation of touch, haptic kind of feedback from our environment absorb our attention for a little while, just like with the vision, but perhaps touch a slightly more subtle sensation, as vision tends to guide our primary experience, we can let some of our other senses take over with a little attention to their place in their being. What is the paper communicating to draw lighter, firmer? Is there a scratchiness or smoothness? Is there resistance to the actions of the drawing, or an ease and flow to how the medium interacts? And whatever you recognize, letting that become the forefront of attention. The possibility of interaction between whatever we may choose as our tool here for expressing visual ideas outward through the drawing. If you begin to work in different directions, going clockwise to counterclockwise, back and forth or around, does that change the sensation here with the graphite as it pushes against the paper? There's a very different scratch from the glide as it pulls along the edge of the cone, or smoothly follows the triangle from the tip. And if one feeling or motion begins to stand out from that, a sensation of interest, lean into it. Perhaps the pulling kind of smoothness of a pencil, which can only be experienced in one direction relative to our arm or body, overrides for a while as we let that attention draw us in, let that sensation fill our mind. You may have to reposition the fingers or the hand in order to maintain that connection with that sensation, and let that guide of awareness inspire some creativity to the way you may be using your pen or pencil. Does the adjustment to keep in focus that sensation inspire new opportunities for the way of interacting within that constraint of something specific, looking for our expression, our interface? Perhaps testing it in both hands if that feels like an interesting challenge. For me, it's always a good exercise to play between both hands. I'm not ambidextrous, but the struggles on the other side help me to remember all the kind of automatic and ingrained things that my right hand tends to do so much more smoothly than the left. But there are times, especially in non-standard ways of using, say, the pencil or the instrument, of the way I'm not used to writing and sketching every day, that the two sides find some balance, some evening out. Or perhaps in the looser, more gestural, the lower level of control and intention opens up some new expression, something to then bring back to our more dominant or prominent control and integrate through both sides of our thinking. In the last 5 minutes or so, with that attention from the eyes to the fingertips, to the experience of holding and maintaining sensation, where do you go deeper in to the drawing with rich, broad expressions, or by focusing inwards to areas of detail? And take a few moments of silence, breathing, and expressing. Orbiting in its celestial mechanics, just playing the silent music of our cosmos, or whatever it may look like. It holds with it all of that experience of the expression of our breath, of our fingertips, of our sensors, and a release of that attention out to prepare us, hopefully, for a nice, mindful day. Thank you for joining. As always, I hope that these exercises serve to provide some platform for reaching into ourselves while also expressing out through whatever creativity lives in these tools and our fingertips and somewhere lurking behind the mind's eye as we start from the things we may know and reach into the unknown, embrace our abilities and techniques, and then let them loose into that space of discomfort and uncertainty as we draw out ideas onto that paper, as we draw forth something from our internal attention and awareness to reflect on it externally. Let me know down in the comments below what you've discovered during these mindful practices, and if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with some friends. You can find me here pretty much every week with a new exercise and mindful drawing techniques and explorations of just how we might find a way into our own creativity and hopefully extract a little bit of relaxation and poise from those moments. As always, I hope you have a wonderful week and draw well. Thank you. This is Rooks is Fun, signing off.